Hi, everyone. My name is Daphne Baldassari, and I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Toronto. And today I'm going to show you one of the chapter of my dissertation where I examine how a diversity intervention by an evaluator influences hiring decision in the film industry, with the evaluator being none other than the Academy of Motion Pictures. So, as you may know, awards hold substantial sway in today's market, shaping the allocation of opportunities, attention, and resources. Consequently, many organizations actively seek awards for themselves or their employees. Nevertheless, there's been concerns about the gender and racial inequalities that exist in the award processes, resulting in adverse consequences for historically marginalized workers. Activists and practitioners often advocate to actually diversify award committees and evaluation committees to try to address this problem. But while prior research has mainly focused on the direct effect, that is, how it influences who wins, who gets nominated, I want to focus on what I call the indirect hiring effects. That is, how award-seeking organizations actually adjust their hiring processes. And specifically, I theorize that award-seeking organizations will respond to such a change because the award-granting organization signals a change in how diversity and inclusion is now valued. So to study this effect, I set my study in the Academy of Motion Pictures. In 2015 and 2016, only white actors and actresses were nominated to the Oscars. And the president of the Academy at the time really felt compelled to take action to this real structural problem, and they led what was called the A2020 intervention, an intervention to drastically increase the number of women and racial minority among Oscar voters. So on the graph on the left, you can see this bump in the number of people invited to join the Academy and the large proportion of people of color invited to join. And to identify those indirect hiring effects, what I did is I partnered with Illuminated Film and TV Data to have all of the hiring decisions on film productions between 2010 and 2021. And one cool aspect of this data is that I do not only observe the above-the-line occupation, that is, the creative occupation that lead the direction on a movie and are the most visible, but I also observe the less visible occupation, that is, the technical occupations. And in my research design to disentangle the general trends of diversity and inclusion from the film industry, from the intervention itself, what I do is I compare hiring decisions between award-seeking films and non-award-seeking films. And now let's get to the results. So what I found first is a 4.7% increase in the likelihood of hiring women or racial minority workers on award-seeking films. So on the graph on the right, what you can see is that before the intervention and the Oscar So White movement, there was actually no difference between the hiring processes in those two films. But after the Oscar So White movement, there is a bump in the change that is sustained by the intervention. But now that we find this main effect, what we really want to know is, are strategic motives at play? And what I did is I used this dichotomy between the visible occupation and the less visible occupation, and in line with a strategic mechanism, I can see that the effects are mainly driven by the visible occupation. Similarly, if we believe that the effect is strategic, we would not expect every person to benefit from it. And when I refined the dependent variable by looking at the affiliation to the Academy of Motion Pictures, what I found is that actually, unfortunately, the effect is driven by the workers, marginalized workers that have been invited to join the Academy. So taken together, what I hope to show in those effects is that we need to focus further, not only on the direct effects of intervention, but also the indirect effects, especially because they may have broader, substantial consequences for the industry, as well as the importance of switching the level of analysis in studying the unintended consequences of diversity intervention, not only focusing on socio-psychological mechanisms, but also the strategic response mechanism that may occur. And finally, while previous research has mainly focused on how social movements may target organizations directly, what I show is that it's interesting to look at how social movements can target an evaluator to trigger an industry-wide change. And I'm very grateful to have the honor to present here. Thank you very much.